Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back for video game news. Today is actually Thursday, October 3rd, and I don't want to make a habit of streaming on Thursdays. Part of the nonsense that has been going on that's just been messing with my overall streaming ability and recording ability, all these mini disasters on top of one medium-sized disaster has really just frazzled my brain. So what happened yesterday when I should have been streaming on Wednesday was, well, to go back another day, on Tuesday I decided to be generous and roll down the window to my car to let a bug fly out. Oh, if I only had known that was going to cost me over $300 because the window, as I pressed the button, just fell all the way down. It didn't shatter, but the mechanism broke. Now, as far as I can tell, the mechanism to replace the window is about $10, and the effort to take off the door panel, which is a lot of work, and you have to be careful not to break any of the wires and stuff, is about maybe $150. Soon as you pay somebody else to do it right, guarantee it, and do it fast, the price goes up. But yeah, it is, suffice it to say, a little too much that I was charged, but that's car repair people in general, is that they just have you over a barrel all the time. One of the things that I find kind of weird and irritating with this car repair place is the fact that they'll give you one free Uber ride if you live close by, which does not logically make any sense at all. Like, if somebody can't get a ride to pick them up after dropping off a car, they're almost certainly not going to be in a position to get a ride to have somebody drop them off to pick up the car. It's going to be two rides for anyone that does take up that system. Their business hours are just 9 to 5, like most business hours for car repairs. That's kind of early to close. They also take their sweet time and don't really schedule anything. Just looking here at these solo missions to see how many of these I'm probably never going to do. At this point, it's kind of pointless to go back and do solo modes when I'm not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! On a daily basis. But yeah, if your hours are 9 to 5, weekdays only, they don't work on Saturday, which is also kind of crazy. That does certainly just feel like you're very much unlikely to ever have a real stream. That's the problem. Okay, figured out what the problem is. I'm dropping frames here because I didn't stop the recording for the Twitch stream. Alright, that should now reset everything and stop giving me drop frames. But yeah, you're just not likely to have people around if they're not retired people. You might find some retired neighbor. I guess they could drive you around, but not the situation for me. So it's kind of ridiculous. You get ripped off, or like you get your average amount of rip off that you get from any car repair place, and then they want to charge you an extra $10-20 for an Uber ride. And certainly the fact that the Uber ride for me is only $10 or $20 for at least that distance, unless it gets really, really crazy, I could see myself just getting rid of the car at some point in the future anyways, and living exclusively with just Uber rides. You do get some random people, I will fully admit that, but it's not that bad. The big problem with Uber is more just that it's not paying people enough money, the workers, the drivers, enough money to, when you really get down to the nitty-gritty of understanding how much damage they're doing to their cars, doing all that. I've also decided, while I still have time, to return the smart doorbell that I got, because it seems like none of the programming, and this is something I definitely have seen before with the cheap Chinese Tuya smart devices. It seems like the motion sensing functions are just not programmed correctly to actually trigger any scene. It does look like Tuya has kind of evolved some of their smarts where certain devices can run locally in certain cases, which might be interesting as newer devices were collected, but it's not every device, and when something's run locally, it probably is only going to be able to control itself. So what I really need, now that I have the smart curtains, is a motion sensing smart doorbell that would see somebody walking up to the door and open up the curtains for a few minutes and then close the curtains again. The hope here is that opening and closing the curtains somehow saves some air conditioning, which it very well might. It's also worth pointing out that the RSS feed for slickdeals.net has been broken for several days, and yet that has not stopped me from buying a whole new smart video doorbell or anything else. Yeah. Not really thinking I'm gonna buy much at the Prime sale, because the Prime sales themselves are not really good deals, and all these other remodeling repair things. I'm saying right now, actually directly just looking at the Slick Deals website, some Lego sets that might be worth it. Some Lego Harry Potter sets. But so far, that's pretty much all I've seen. Speaking of Lego, there's also some new Lego Christmas sets I would like to get. But, you know, I may just wait until months after Christmas to do all of that. So I'm kind of rambling here to explain something that's fairly simple, is that 2 days ago the window fell down. I then resolved to show up the next day as early as possible to drop off the car and have it repaired. Because I woke up and did that, it just broke my schedule so much in my mind that I didn't even realize it was Wednesday. And so I just happily thought that it was Tuesday, I guess, was the thought, until I woke up Thursday, and saw that I had just missed an entire day. Now, I did, ironically, spend a decent amount of time playing Punch Club. So I've actually made a decent amount of progress in Punch Club, and do think I'm going to probably have to struggle a little bit, but I will make it to the end unless I just get super irritated at it. There is a large amount of chance there that it'll just get really grindy. But yeah, there's a whole story there that easily 2/3 of the players are not even going to get to, involving a magical medallion that I've just unlocked. And there's a lot of side quest stuff that you may never find or you may not unlock. Also, a lot of it seems to push you to want to be a criminal and do criminal activity. And so if you avoid that, then there's a lot less to do in the game. One thing I would say is you definitely should play it on easy. And the number of skill points to upgrade skills maxes out at 25, but that's still a massive amount of skill points. That's 5 or 6 fights, depending on the fight, that you have to go through before you can upgrade one skill point, unlock one skill. And so yeah, I feel like there definitely is room for just tweaking those numbers a little bit and keeping it a faster experience. Yet it is a management game, but what you're actually managing by the second act of the game, which is very possibly a 2-act game, when I finally finish it and try and figure out whether it's 2 or 3 acts, by the time you've gotten to that several hours into the game, you've perfected as much as you're going to ever perfect the management aspect. There's nothing different you can do that would be better, or at least it doesn't seem like there is. So anyways, here's the SteamDB concurrent player chart, and we still are seeing Black Myth Wukong high. What is Stone and Liberty? Interesting. I haven't seen this game. Satisfactory is falling downward, and at this point Deadlock is still, as an early access beta, fairly high, but not probably as high as Valve would want it. Speaking of Valve, Valve did that whole arbitration agreement change, dropping arbitration agreements and class action suits. When that news first came out, it was not researched very well, which is pretty true for a mainstream video game journalist in general. And I definitely speculated that there might be some kind of lawsuit action happening that caused them to drop those binding arbitration agreements and class action waiver suits, and that's exactly the case. They were being sued by somebody, and a law firm saw that they had a binding arbitration agreement and decided to get as many people as possible to agree to a arbitration case individually in mass. The difference there being, to do arbitration, Valve has to put up about $3,000 of fees just to start the whole arbitration process for each person. So you're talking, I think it was somewhere around $247 million that they had to pay just up front because of those binding arbitration agreements. Valve actually tried to sue the law firm that was in mass coordinating these arbitration suits, and they lost on that lawsuit too, clearly showing that there is a precedent here that you can force companies that have long since had an imbalance of power and force people into binding arbitration agreements, often through just the basic trickery of having extremely complicated and long terms of service updates that nobody has time to read. Well, to fight that now, law firms can just get lots and lots of people to have their own individual arbitration cases filed. And yeah, so Valve wasn't just doing that out of the goodness of their heart. I seriously doubted the Valve was doing it out of the goodness of their heart. You would have to assume that Gabe Newell actually cares that much about what happens to Valve, which he's not that focused on it. He's really a figurehead, and he has his own new company, at least one new company that he's focusing on too. Gabe Newell is very much just a mascot, your Shigeru Miyamoto type character at this point for Valve. He's not the secret ruler or king of Valve. If anything, it's more a bunch of small kingdoms, fiefdoms of shareholders and stockholders that nobody really knows who owns the shares or who really has power, is how I've heard it described. That it's almost like it's a dictatorship under some kind of secret police type state, and that you don't know who's really reporting to who or who's in charge. That pretends to be more of a anarchy state or a libertarian state where everybody just does whatever they want. But yeah, it's really, no company could really be run that way. But yeah, I'm glad that I've started to see some other YouTubers start to figure that out and report on it better, because that certainly was a weird move. I still haven't gotten around to coming back and trying to clarify this chart. There's still probably about 8 sample days here that are too close together. But I say this every time I stream. I'm not thinking that this chart is too off the mark as far as what is being played. Of course, getting down to true relevancy is almost just an art of an opinion, because I still would think some of these games, to me, like Hearts of Iron, are never going to seem like they're relevant at all, when clearly there is either a lot of bots or a lot of players that are still playing that game. And inherently, what we might find out if I just started to implement a blacklist after, say, the end of the year, is that the games that are going to be new will be so far on the list that they'll be below the top 100 games. But I don't have a better way of trying to get this data. I'm not sure at this point if the data is even that valuable, but I put so much effort into making this chart, I'm not going to lose it. And I do think there is a value here. We're desperately trying to figure out relevancy. Another thing about Steam is that Steam has, well, part of that subscriber agreement, let's say that first, was that you had to basically delete your account to not agree to it and lose access to all your games. Otherwise, if you continue to use Steam after, I think it's somewhere around the 15th, then you're automatically assuming that you agree to those terms too. Of course, I don't know how enforceable even that is, because there is definitely a real believable scenario where somebody turns on their gaming PC and just leaves it on all the time and has not looked at their gaming PC in months. Like, why would an automated process be enough to count? It really would probably be better if contract in terms of service updates had to be either very standardized by some government agency, like you have some special district court that is just slightly below the Supreme Court that hands out, here's a standardized form of terms and services you can use. If you choose to veer away from these standardized forms, then you're wider open to lawsuits, and you must submit any variation if you are going to veer off the standardized form for approval by this bureau made up of like terms of service style lawyers. And then yeah, if it was really a case where there was just a government agency that said straight up, we're not going to let you change your terms of service until we approve it, and we're going to almost certainly be backlogged by a large amount, that could fix a lot of this terms of service nonsense that exists, probably on both sides too. Steam is going to have a turn-based RPG fest from now to October 7th. I seriously doubt I would catch any attention at all, or any desire to play a turn-based RPG. There probably are some that aren't terrible to think about buying. There's probably a lot of relevancy to like Final Fantasy 3D Remake, then things like Cassette Beasts for your Pokemon style fans might be something. Dragon Quest 11 is a very relevant one to grab. Danganronpa Ultimate Summer is a weird one. I didn't know Munchkin. Is this a... When did this game come out? I know the real world game Munchkin has been around for a while. I suppose the other thing worth it, the Atelier games, certainly getting the whole Ryza trilogy right about now, or Octopath Traveler. Yeah. One of the things about, I should have said about the video doorbell, is that I bought a new one to test it out so I could send the other one back, or send the new one back. But they all on Steam, on Amazon.com, are basically from the same one, maybe 2 or 3 different middleman companies on Amazon.com. So I'm buying a new model in the hopes that it is a new model because it uses a QR code to set up, where the old one doesn't use a QR code. That doesn't mean it supports Matter. It's still a Tuya device, so still might be older. And there's not just software updates for, they just don't really make software updates for the older ones, which that really would have been the solution here, is if a software update had fixed things. And I tried that. I contacted the device manufacturer with no response after a couple days. I imagine there will not be a response anytime soon. They still have a little bit of time. They could call back or message me back, but I bet it's not going to happen. But yeah, it is kind of ridiculous to end up just buying a slightly different one. All I'm really doing is looking at the screenshots and looking at the user interface and seeing if it's different. If the user interface looks the same, there's a high chance that the back-end programming that I need to work is about the same and still won't work. And that's annoying. Although, in this case, there's also, I found a good deal to get 3 screens instead of 2 receiver screens for inside the house with the video doorbell, because that's the whole thing. It's a video intercom setup, so you don't just have to rely on your cell phone, which I also realized my Samsung phone hasn't been updated since 2022, So it kind of is time for me to buy a new phone. And it's probably time for me to think about getting away from Samsung at this point and seeing maybe I can find something that would support micro SD cards. Yeah, something might support a different kind of CPU. Try and more of a standard processor. Although there is a real thought to just go to like Google Pixel phones and see if they're any better. I haven't done enough research on it. But yeah. It kind of doesn't matter that the software hasn't been updated since 2022. But how did I overlook Munchkin? That's crazy. Probably not buying any games this year. I honestly may have gone this entire year with not buying a single game on Steam, just because I've been so busy thinking about other things and I have plenty of games and I'm just not making enough footage. It would be nice certainly to have a refresh and some more variety. It is getting to kind of bottom of the barrel as far as the games I can pick to play, but there isn't anything that's really grabbing my attention. I think it was Captain Sparkles playing this TCG card shop simulator game, and seemingly on purpose he's not throwing away any of the boxes of any of the shipments he receives, so that's gonna get busy fast. It is slightly different experience, I guess, from the supermarket simulator in that there's play tables you have to set up very quickly. I saw that the characters can be stinky and you buy deodorant on top of just buying card packs. You personally take card packs off the wall, and if you get anything of value you put them for individual sale on card display stands, and probably sell snacks too. They've made a whole Pokemon trading card game parody with a whole bunch of characters, and each card seems to have about 5 different levels of rarity, which is quite a lot. So yeah, it is, I think, a different enough experience. It looks like there's some merchandise you can also sell. A different enough experience as far as simulating it compared to running a grocery store. Both are kind of weird jobs that most people aren't going to have. And I would say having a trading card shop exclusively probably only works in places like Manhattan, New York City, where you can charge $4 a pack and people will still buy a lot of packs and you can be that specialized. Whereas I would imagine in most places, in the United States at least, a trading card store would have maybe at most a third of the store dedicated to trading cards, often just the behind the checkout counter section dedicated to trading card packs, and then the rest of the place would be play tables and Dungeons and Dragons and comic books and things like that. It would very much be still that nerd hobby comic book type place, and you would have cross promotion for all of that. Speaking of trading card games, Magic the Gathering announced that a new ban list was going to ban at least 4 what sounded like very rare, very powerful cards, which seemed to cause some more than average commotion, at which point the Commander Rules Committee handed over control back to Wizards of the Coast. So outside looking in, I would assume this is the beginning of the end as far as playing Commander in any kind of official tournaments. because Wizards of the Coast is going to just increasingly create ban lists that promote the sales and purchasing of new cards as much as possible. And as far as I can tell, for Magic the Gathering, playing Commander format is the format most people want to play these days, not the original Magic the Gathering format. So anytime I hear any news around Magic the Gathering, it sounds awful. Sounds like things are just constantly getting worse. And I think that is kind of the problem. Hasbro, being the parent company of Wizards of the Coast now, is just trying to squeeze its players base for as much money as possible. Perhaps they see the writing on the wall. Perhaps they just know that there won't be future generations of Magic the Gathering players. They are at least not as efficient as the Pokemon trading card game, the mobile game that's about to come out. I think that game is going to go in a very different direction to try and squeeze a new generation of Pokemon trading card fans, but I do suspect Pokemon will stay around. It really depends on just, can there be enough bad blood developed for little kid players against Nintendo and Pokemon company. And it can happen, but I'm not sure it will happen. Nintendo certainly is trying to create a lot of anti-Nintendo sentiment against itself by once again targeting a forked version of the Nintendo Switch emulator and taking it down, which, if it wasn't obvious the last time, it's definitely obvious now that these kinds of forked versions will probably pop up and disappear, and you probably are just going to have to VPN into like a Tor network, dark web websites to get the latest versions of those emulators, if you even need to get the latest versions of those emulators. More than likely, it's just going to become a thing where the place that you find your ROMs online is also going to be the place where maintenance and development for Switch emulation is going to happen. Nintendo is very much looking at all of its worldwide cases and anti-emulation policies from at best, it's a Japanese interpretation of Japanese law. At worst, it is a made-up interpretation from Nintendo, and they are not going to allow any emulators that emulate any of the newest products, systems. They probably have already given up on emulators that would emulate things like NES games. But yeah, Nintendo is certainly not doing it with any kind of style or with any kind of general thought. They're just getting very sue happy, and their lawyers are definitely doing a lot. Notably, though, we haven't seen anything or heard anything from those Pal World patent claims. So seems very much like they just timed those announcements and lawsuits to hurt Pal World's release in Japan, and then the actual lawsuit may actually go somewhere, but it probably won't go anywhere for years, at least months. Anyways, let's go through the Video Games Chronicles. Video Games Chronicle stories. There's probably going to be a lot of news today, considering how I was supposed to stream yesterday. It also means there'll probably be very little news on Friday, assuming I remember to stream on Friday. There's definitely an argument that I could shift my streaming schedule, but it just wouldn't make a lot of sense to me it would be Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays is what I could shift it to. Which still, that could work. It just feels weird. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday feels much more logical for the few people that are watching my streams from their offices and they work Monday through Friday. But even in that case, you would just have to be a little bit behind. But for video game news, being behind, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So the first headline here is Masahiro Sakurai will post his final regular quote-unquote YouTube video later this month. A final special episode will be posted at a later date. This is old Japanese people. They may not look that old. Trying to make their celebrity and presence become less, so Masahiro Sakurai in general has been tired, it seems like, for about a decade of making Smash Brothers content. It is questionable what you could do with a new Smash Brothers game at this point. Nintendo has done as many characters as I think they can do, and the next Nintendo console, the Switch 2, is not likely going to be that big of a visual improvement or frame rate improvement. It's not going to let you have more characters on the screen as far as AI characters or online co-op or anything like that. So it's almost certainly true that they will make a Smash Brothers game, but it probably won't just be incremental improvements over the last Smash Brothers, which the only other thing they could possibly do is take a long break, leave Smash Brothers Ultimate as it is, leave it playable, and then say we're going to take a long break and we're going to remaster the first Smash Brothers game. We're going to get the visuals there, but we're not going to add any new characters or features or anything. We're just going to remaster and re-release the original game. Then you wait a year, you remaster the next game, and you just start over from the beginning. By the time you were done remastering all the previous Smash Brothers games, then there would have been a significant enough change to make a new Smash Brothers game. That also would probably make a lot of Smash fans happy, because it would bring back some of the earlier versions of Smash Brothers that Nintendo has tried to keep people from playing, which is definitely an argument that that wouldn't happen. Let's see, the Xbox co-founder, Jay Allard, has joined Amazon. He's working on, quote, new ideas as vice president of product. His name is just Jay Allard. I recognize the name Jay Allard, but I thought there was a last name there. So he is the vice president of Amazon.com's devices and services team, which could be things like Ring doorbells. And I thought Google owned Ring doorbells. Actually. I guess Google owns Nest, Amazon owns Ring. Echo devices, Fire TVs, and it's Luna Cloud. They misspelled cloud here, gaming service, which is probably the least that they're interested in. So it definitely feels like he could be working on anything. I question what he's been doing recently at Microsoft. There clearly are some big shakeups happening at Microsoft after the Xbox got its new lead. It may very well also have been a case that Jay Allard thought he might be the new person in charge of Xbox, which would kind of make sense. And when that didn't happen, he started to look for new jobs, new work. And yeah, you are at a weird level when you're that high up in management that if you can't, that you have very few companies and very few positions you can transition to. Otherwise, you have to just pretend like you're retiring and then hope people forget that you worked as a vice president before you take a job of a year later as a middle manager. Riot has teased new playable experiences in the Valorant universe. Valorant, which has over 35 million players per month, is moving also to the Unreal Engine 5. This is Valorant? I believe the Epic Store lowered its rates for listing a Unreal Engine game on the Epic Store also. New Lords of the Fallen 2 details revealed as a CI Games targets a 2026 release. The sequel is to feature more commercial art styles and narrative elevated production values. Microsoft is seeking feedback from studios which aren't on Xbox devs on rival consoles. That's okay. I'm misreading this because this is one sentence, period. Microsoft is seeking feedback from studios which aren't on Xbox. This is the subheadline, different sentence. Devs on rival consoles probably have a great perspective we could learn from. That is a smart attitude certainly to have, to seek any feedback you can get, although they may very well have already decided something that they were going to do in these kinds of research things may just be used to justify doing something. It is an interesting thought. I'm not sure though what information you're going to get from this. Let's just think of what rival consoles would be. If you're a developer making a PlayStation game, is there one aspect about the PlayStation development or that you could say Microsoft should do? Yeah, I'm not sure if there is, really. If you're making Nintendo Switch games, is there one aspect that you think Microsoft should do from the development of games for the Nintendo Switch? At some level, I guess the Joy-Cons technology, which is probably patented by Nintendo, the pointer aspect of the Joy-Cons and the Wiimote aspects of them, are features that are non-existent on an Xbox. They are also features that are just not used very often on even the Nintendo Switch. I'll also leave the Steam Deck out of this because developers making games on a Steam Deck probably are not rivals to Xbox. The biggest argument they probably would get is that PlayStation developers would say the controller layouts should be like the DualSense layouts and the PlayStation layouts. Nintendo developers should say that the button layouts should be like the Nintendo button layouts. Xbox probably can't do either of those suggestions, and almost certainly wouldn't. Then there would be the third rival, which would be mobile game developers. And mobile game developers make very different products, and so any of their suggestions probably shouldn't be taken to heart without very careful consideration. You could see mobile game developers telling Xbox and Microsoft to just support microtransactions like crazy. And while that might get a lot of money out of players, in the long run it would destroy the premium feel, whatever real premium feel you have for a major console like the Xbox. it is certainly telegraphing your ignorance here when you have quotes like, if you aren't on Xbox, we'd love to know why. Most companies would pretend at least to kind of know why. Some of this may straight up be a case where they're trying to get evidence that PlayStation is bullying developers to not be on Xbox or paying off developers, some of which is legal, some of which may very well be shady. The Super Mario Bros. Movie 2 actor teases an intriguing setting and deep cut characters. The sequel is a little broader in scope, according to the Toad's voice actor. I imagine they won't go too far from the script of what the first movie was. The first movie has been one of the few successful movies in the past few years, major success. It's also been one of the few successful video game movies, which we are slowly getting to a better situation where you have successes like Super Mario Bros. Movie and the Sonic movies, but then we also get pulled down for Borderlands movies, and there is the Fallout Amazon Prime TV series too to consider there. Let's see. The Nintendo Museum Shop is limiting sales of some items after just one day. Online marketplaces are already being flooded with listings for popular items. No surprise there. They might as well have had just limits to begin with. As far as what is being sold, looks like it's really mostly just pins or keychains. Keychains are incredibly popular in Japan, as there are little gifts. Also listing some of these at very high prices. Most of these are way overpriced. I didn't have an article to talk about it, but apparently At Games released a claw machine where it is a miniature scaled down arcade claw machine, but it has kind of a major flaw in that you can only put extremely light things into the plastic balls and extremely small things into the plastic balls that the claw machine's claw can actually lift up and drop. So, plus you have to provide your own toys. It's not the worst thought. Claw machines are unique devices, and in the long run, if you just really loved claw machines and didn't want to waste a bunch of money, getting one of those, getting one for your home, isn't the worst thought ever. It's also perhaps an interesting way to display things or store things, but it seems like most At Games products, I think it's At Games is the name of it, it's just not built to particular quality, and last thing you really want to do is have to replace a stepper motor, which would add a lot more to the price. I think it's like a $500 device. If they got it down to is a $150 device, that might make sense. And I've also often thought that somebody should just make a jukebox that is flat against the wall, because you really only need it to be like a third of an inch deep as far as the technology now. It doesn't need to be super deep to hold actual records or CDs, but if you had something like that that just stuck 3M stick tape on the wall, that would be an interesting display. In the same way, a claw game that was more two-dimensional and just had different balls in just maybe 4 or 5 inches deep of a platform where you're just going left and right might make a lot of sense too, because it's the depth that very often takes up a lot of that square footage in those products. There was a company that was making a somewhat shallower standing shooter arcade machine at real scale, so not scaled down like the At Games does. And seems like they sold maybe a couple hundred of those units, and then they've recently announced that they aren't going to make any more because they're too small of a company, and their first love and first focus is making virtual pinball machines, which they do a very good job, it looks like, doing that too. Unfortunately, that also means the software to run the shooter games is never going to get updated, although I'm not sure you really can update the software much. I don't know how many more games out of the initial launch as far as standing shooter arcade games exist. Once you have all the ROMs, you have all the ROMs. Updating the launcher with art would take too much time. Updating the emulators is easy enough to do without somebody else doing it for you. And if it's working now, there's really no reason to even update any of it. But yeah, they're focusing in on virtual pinball machines only, which makes a lot of sense. If they could get the price down on their virtual pinball machines, which are, I think, around $10,000 to get a really good one with a majorly powerful computer in it, if they could get that down, that would be great. But you're still in a weird situation, particularly with virtual pinball, in that you're emulating and showing a picture on an LCD screen of pinball. You're not actually playing pinball where there's a pinball on a table going up and down ramps and things like that. And as much as you can try and emulate that, it's just not going to feel the same. I am rambling today once again. Let's see. Almost 3 hours of the Until Dawn gameplay is leaked online ahead of release. Sony has also published the launch trailer for the PS5 and PC remake. Okay. I'm gonna have to tinker at some point and figure out why some of these pictures just aren't exactly in the right place. But anything I change is potentially gonna just change most of the pages in the wrong direction. First Silent Hill 2 and Metaphor ReFantagio reviews have been published. So, from Famitsu, they've published reviews. Interesting, I didn't even know Silent Hill 2 was out. Metaphor ReFantagio got a massive 9, 18, 27, 37. And then Silent Hill got 35 out of 40, which is also fairly high. So it's a good week for video games in Japan. And this might be the turning point where we start to actually see games coming out worldwide that are actually worth talking about and playing. Level 5 CEO hints that Nintendo convinced him to agree to another Professor Layton game. Let's see, Akihiro Hino says he was wary of bringing the series back after its beautiful conclusion. We'll leave it at that. F-Zero GP Legend and the Japan-only F-Zero Climax are coming to Switch's online GPA library. F-Zero 99 has also received 5 new tracks from the satellite view version of F-Zero. Of course, F-Zero 99 is going to be one of those 99 games that you should play now before it disappears. Here's the emulator I was talking about. The Switch emulator Ryu Jinx has been taken down after Nintendo contacted its lead developer. Nintendo took down Yuzu. I'm pretty sure Ryu Jinx is a fork of Yuzu. They took that down back in May. And see, this is the problem. Just like contact alone is so threatening that emulators are getting taken down. Inherently, if you are going to do any work on an emulator at all, you have to establish a whole new identity that must be secret at all costs, and potentially just have a whole new computer that can't be leaked back to you to run and write the code. And most of these emulator developers are not that clandestine. They don't think of themselves certainly as, I've got to be a deep web black hat hacker style paranoid person just because I want to make an emulator that can emulate the Nintendo Switch. But when there's such a moneyed interest trying to hunt down and sue, or at least threaten, every single emulator out there, they're phrasing it as offering an agreement. Yeah. Remember, it's also a case that Nintendo set a precedent just a year or so ago in which they somehow figured out a way to throw somebody in jail for effectively what is a civil money crime, which people for non-violent crimes, in my opinion, should not be in jail, even if you ended up making millions of dollars or stealing millions of dollars off of people. It just doesn't fix anything at that point to put somebody in jail. It is just purely punishing punitive actions. But yeah, they figured out a way to do that. That shouldn't have been allowed, almost certainly. Yeah, even if I think of like Bernie Madoff, or like just a random example, made up example, somebody who just stole, let's just say, billions of dollars from nursing homes and Medicare and health insurance that was supposed to go to people. I mean, if all you did was get financial changes there, and they can't prove that because at some point you took money from a health insurance company that led to poor treatment or no treatment to somebody who deserved it, which arguably the fact that health insurance companies can deny and give poor treatment or cause poor treatment should be criminalized itself. Yeah, even in like that worst case scenario, I still don't see a reason why you should be in jail or prison. Maybe home arrest, certainly. Definitely watched. Definitely screwed over financially for the rest of your life. Probably. But yeah, I just don't see why a point of sending somebody that's only done financial crimes to crime college to learn and teach their financial crimes to other people in jail and prison. Yep. And I'm rambling again, so I guess I should move on. Well, apparently Microsoft has discontinued its HoloLens. I hope we talk about that. It's taken a while. PUBG Studios is bringing Palworld to mobile. PUBG's owner Krafton has signed a licensing agreement for a mobile version. I think that might help Palworld's a little bit, but inherently, I think that if the argument was to be made that Palworld is done, then it's just not that intriguing of a game in the longer run. And if it's never done, then people are going to be unhappy about that. And if it's not getting significant updates, which it definitely hasn't been a case where we've seen updates announced for Palworld at the same rate that we've seen updates announced for like Genshin Impact. And that would have been the right way to handle it after its major success, is to say we're going to just have monthly events and monthly updates to add even small little features, at least look like we're doing something. Microsoft is discontinuing the HoloLens mixed reality headsets. Plans to end the support for the hardware have been detailed. There's a story about a person with an exoskeleton, and the medical company that made the exoskeleton said that it being 10 years old, it was too old for them to bother to fix. And so he was literally paralyzed just because the battery was broken. Of course, news got out and then they changed their tune fast and fixed it, but that is certainly a scary problem, certainly when you combine a desire to spend the least amount on support, as capitalism does, with a device that literally is controlling somebody's health or movement. Of course, that's been a story that's been talked about a lot of times. Repo, the genetic opera, takes it to a very far extreme, but it's not that crazy, really. It is illegal to reprocess devices implanted into patients if they don't pay, or disable devices, but it doesn't seem to me that external devices have to be repaired, at least. I recently found out some interesting facts about hospice in the United States as far as the financials there, in that if you have Medicare Advantage and you go into hospice, which is more of a concept than a building, it drops down to basic Medicare, potentially significantly increasing the amount you pay for medicine. It also does not cover room and board if you end up in a nursing home in hospice, which they usually charge $10,000 a day plus for room and board in nursing homes. So very quickly you could have very good insurance, Medicare Advantage insurance, and then be effectively sold on, some might say tricked into going into the hospice system, which then would change all the finances and screw you over and run up medical debts like crazy. So even if you have insurance, you've got to be careful. Of course, some people don't have a choice. Some people, hospice obviously is the right choice, but check the financials certainly on it, because like anything as far as healthcare is concerned in the United States, it's all very much controlled by insurance companies, and mostly just insurance companies, and it's schemy, it's scammy, it's not a good system at all. I think most people can agree to that. Let me knock off that alarm and let's move on. We've gone a full hour and we haven't even gotten to Video Games Chronicles. Headlines. There was a whole Verizon network down for a couple days there. I'm not sure it really affected gaming too much. Sony is blaming a quote-unquote tech error for obtrusive PS5 dashboard ads. The company says the newsfeed bug has now been resolved. Sure, the tech error almost certainly was that they went ahead and activated something before it was planned to be activated. But clearly, any kind of error like that that shows you there can be obnoxious full screen ads tells you the direction that they have programmed the software to go, and they don't spend money to pay programmers to do things in the hypothetical. This is clearly a direction that they are planning on going. Pause screen ads, clearly a direction that everybody is also going. More ads in general, definitely a thing. Speaking somewhat about ads, the 4th generation Tableau devices, which was made by the new company that bought Tableau and has the free ad-supported streaming television channels built into its software, has put out a Apple TV app. It's still very much a case, though, where it's a tough sell now that there's new people in charge to upgrade from the old Tableaus to the new Tableaus. The new Tableaus not really knocking people's socks off, is much more trying to push people into watching the fast channels and the streaming channels and not really watch the over-air channels. The whole point of the Tableau was to be a DVR for over-the-air free channels. Those two have commercials in them. At one point there was some commercial skipping in the Tableau, but I'm not sure the fourth generation really is too interested in people skipping commercials even on the over-the-air channels. Of course, TV is also garbage, so having a Tableau is about as much as you should really spend. It's also worth pointing out that DirecTV and Dish have agreed to merge, which could cause some major changes to happen too. A lot has happened, I guess, in the past few days. I've certainly been looking at the news and catching this information clearly. I've also been watching Spy X Family. I started watching that last night. And yeah, so far so good. I think it's probably just best to know that the drama around it at the beginning, for what little drama there is probably going to boil down into more of a just family story, family comedy story. But I don't think that they're particularly dishonest about that's the direction it's going to go. But yeah, not hating it. October's PlayStation Plus Essential games are now live with WWE 2K24, Dead Space, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. Alright. Square Enix wants to release Final Fantasy XVI on Xbox, the producer says. Players should not give up in terms of their hopes, according to Naoki Yoshida. Yeah, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, particularly at this point. It would just be an opportunity to get some more money, and Square Enix likes money, and it's not like they have a better plan. But I could also see Square Enix just saying, let's just cancel that thought and move on to new projects, the new shiny projects that Square Enix seems to always love. There's quite a surprising lack of Japanese loyalty to the products and the franchise for Square Enix, which is usually not how it goes. It has been in the past that companies have just been loyal to a product to a fault, where they are just continuing to support and make more content well past the point where it makes sense. Let's see, the Castlevania veteran Shutaro Ida has stepped down from Bloodstained 2 following a cancer diagnosis. It is a great blow to have him step away, says the producer Koji Igarashi. Well, that's a shame. Still haven't even gotten around to playing Bloodstained 1. but this definitely feels like this is some art from a Bloodstained 2. I'm not sure if they announced the Bloodstained 2. They must have. They did it way back in 2021. It was in early planning stages. It's been a while. That's a shame, certainly. Hopefully he gets better. But yeah, he's probably pretty old, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's not coming back, even if he did get healthy. Let's see. Tinga wants Hi-Fi Rush 2 to be a more open world type of experience. This may be a case where some of these news stories are things we've already talked about. There's a slight possibility I actually did stream on Wednesday and completely have just blacked it out. I don't think so. And I checked my YouTube channel to see that, but yeah, we may very well just start to see some familiar stories, because certainly it has taken, it's taken a while to get to even this point, which we haven't even finished the Video Games Chronicle. New Xbox Game Pass titles for console, PC, and cloud have been revealed. It includes Sifu, Inscription, and Mad Streets. I definitely am at a point where Sifu and Inscription are games I remember seeing and putting on my wish list a couple years ago, and I have not gotten around to buying those games on Steam or playing them. I'm falling an entire cycle behind as far as new games go. In reality, I'm probably many cycles behind. There's probably been a lot of years where I haven't gotten any new games that would catch up for all the new games that have come out. I saw on Reddit somebody posting about how they were falling out of love with games, and there's kind of nothing you can say about that. Take a break, come back to it. I don't feel like that's really the case. I do have still a decent desire to play games. I just am struggling to find the time and energy, which is leading certainly to some level of frustration too. Let's see. PlayStation has put conditions on the 30th anniversary PS5 Pro pre-orders in Japan. They have to prove their PS4, PS5 users before they can order a console. Again, they're trying to perhaps being overly strict to stop scalping. Hans Zimmer has released his Dragon Age The Veilguard theme. Let's see, the RPG itself will be released in October. Hans Zimmer is a name I've heard, but I'm not sure as far as his discography. He worked on Gladiator, The Dark Knight, and more. Probably means he's really good with the background music more than pop music with lyrics, which is really what you do need in games. The pop music with lyrics only works in cutscenes and only works once. My robot vac is still working very well. It did manage to catch about an inch square of cardboard, and it mopped the heck out of that cardboard until it was a gooey mess. It wasn't really that big of a mess. I just picked it up and threw it away, but it got it under its mopping roller and just kept watering it and wetting it and dragging it along. But it's not like the ink ran or something like that from the cardboard either, so it wasn't a big deal. I am noticing that one thing about a robot mop and a robot vacuum is that your mileage is going to drastically vary based on, are you going to be responsible and pick up things off the floor and not have big things dropped on the floor, pieces of plastic and like paper, napkins, tissues, bandages, things like that. All that could just fall on the floor easily. If you're not picking those up and clearing off the floor before it mops, it's probably going to drag those things around, or it might pick them up, but it might not. It's not really designed to pick up anything, I would say, bigger than maybe 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, or I was saying in inches, so I'd say maybe half an inch by half an inch. Small things. It's designed to sweep up hair and dust, not just suck up Lego pieces off the floor. Speaking of Lego, the Lego NES set, which is a decent set, worth getting if you can get it at a good price. The Atari 2600 set and the Sonic Green Hill set are retiring soon. Once stocks run out, expect prices to increase via resellers. This is about the only one of those sets I'd recommend. The Atari set is playing to a level of nostalgia that I think most people don't have, and it is really highlighting a console that's not that good, alongside several games that aren't that good. And then the Green Hill Zone, which they don't even have a picture of, isn't so much a recreation of a console. Now weirdly, there should have been an opportunity here for a Super NES set, and it doesn't seem like Lego or Nintendo is that interested in doing that. They didn't make a top loader second version of the NES either. They didn't give you any side sets, which they really should have, where you would have gotten a different cartridge and different vertical strips here that you could swap out and change what was on the TV. But yeah, if you weren't going to go crazy and release like a dozen sets with a dozen games, the next thing would be to make a TV that's a little bit more modern, maybe a little bit flatter, a little bit bigger screen, put imagery of Super Mario World on it, probably not have the gimmick where it's spinning around in circles and moving again, and then you have a Super NES there and Super NES controller. That would make a lot of sense. Like, I'm trying not to spend too much on Lego because I have far too much of a backlog, but I could definitely see myself getting the Super NES, even though I never even really had a Super NES when I was a kid, and then getting a Nintendo 64 and a GameCube. I could also see them not bothering with the TV aspect and just releasing consoles. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they're doing any of that. Let's see, the Tekken boss, Harada, doesn't think a retro Tekken collection would work. Polygonal games don't age as well as sprite-based games, he argues. He's certainly right. I agree with him, but they probably should do it anyways. We are approaching a point now where polygonal games could be smoothed out with just filtering and some of the deep learning super sampling type thoughts. The only other argument would be full-on remakes, and I don't think it's worth spending the money to do full-on remakes of the old Tekken games. So yeah, it's kind of just something that probably should do for historical reasons but wouldn't sell that well. Let's see. So the PlayStation Network was also down when the Verizon network went down. Fairly. Seems like something big happened, although I haven't actually heard what the big thing was. And that probably was also what took down slickdeals.net, but they were down for quite a long time. and their RSS feed still isn't working. Amazon's Like a Dragon Yakuza series has a new trailer. I watched a documentary on Amazon Prime Video based on the Clue movie, which is based on the Clue board game. And it was a fine documentary in the sense that it did all the basic things you need to do, but it was actually pretty awful because there was just nothing interesting to say there. All of the actors who are still alive, which a lot of them aren't, that showed up and were interviewed, just said glowingly nice things about each other. It didn't seem like there was any real story or conflict or problem developing the movie at all. The movie didn't do well in theaters, having 3 different endings, but then gained a cult following on cable TV and VHS. They read from a book version what was a 4th ending that was proposed of Clue, which wasn't really too different. It's just that the butler actually did do it and then almost gets away with it and then gets eaten by the dogs at the end, which would have been fairly bloody and gory depending on how it was depicted. Yeah, there's just kind of nothing to it. It was a really long documentary to watch. Had it been 10-20 minutes as a YouTube video, it would have been fine, but he got nothing interesting from it. No interesting details or anything. I wonder how often it actually does happen to documentarians, that they just have nothing at the end of years of trying to get the information, and then they just give up on it or try to figure out some way to fix it in post and editing to make it feel like there was something. Anyways, I'm supposed to be talking about video game news here, and I'm just getting worse and worse as far as the diatribes, and yeah, clearly my head's not in the game. I missed an entire day. Starfield's Scattered Space expansion launched alongside a new title update on Steam. If there's a link to Steam, I think it's pretty much got a mixed reviews right now. That's what I had heard. That people who did play it just didn't feel like there was a lot there. And it certainly wasn't a great game changer for your experience as far as Starfield up until that point. Let's see, Yoshi P questions whether it's possible to remake Final Fantasy IX as a single title. It's a game with huge volume, says the Final Fantasy XIV director. I don't know if Final Fantasy fans would be willing to tolerate a game being split up and sold to them in pieces. Final Fantasy VII Remake is doing that, breaking it into a trilogy, but that almost certainly is going to be the exception that proves the rule, and even in that case, I don't think the numbers are showing massive sales for the second part of Final Fantasy VII Remake's trilogy. There is definitely a problem that games like Final Fantasy are super long and grindy, but I would say you fix that problem by balancing your game correctly, getting rid of a lot of the grind, giving a lot more XP per fight, having only important fights really take place, and less random encounters or no random encounters with creatures just to gain a little bit of XP. Punch Club is kind of the same thing. Is that there's definitely a different way you could have made that game, where every single boxing match would have been a storyline focused boxing match that you have to win, and there's less random fights that you can engage with. GTA 5 has topped European sales chart in August ahead of Star Wars Online Outlaws. Let's see. Sony says that Concord charted at number 347. That is incredibly low, unless you're comparing it to like the Steam database overall. They're probably 347 out of 10,000 plus games is a pretty high number, just not high enough for Sony, obviously, what they spent on it. I think I saw an estimate somewhere around $500 million was spent making Concord, which would speak to them really spending only $500 million to develop it and barely spending any of that to advertise it, which, yeah, it definitely felt like they didn't spend any money advertising it, or very little. Football Manager 25 release date confirmed. The game will hit PC, Mac, and consoles in late November. These kinds of management games, I don't think I'd ever deep dive into. Punch Club as a boxing game is more simplistic, and kind of as a joke game, it's more simplistic, and even at that, I'm getting overwhelmed by the amount of management. Definitely wouldn't want to get a dire in the numbers management game where I actually had to run an Excel sheet or something. Ryzen online game is reportedly Guerrilla's next major project. A third mainline series is starring Aloy could be way off, it's been claimed. I guess the question here is there enough of an audience for an online game in the Ryzen universe? I guess if you want to fight robot dinosaurs with your friends versus fighting regular dragons and dinosaurs playing a Monster Hunter game, there might be a thought there, but then you still have to get over the fact that it's a Ryzen game. It almost certainly would make more sense if they made an online game and didn't call it Horizon and still had robot dinosaurs. Anybody theoretically could make robot dinosaurs. I don't think they own the copyright or patent to that concept. So I could see a competing online game where you're fighting robot dinosaurs too. Final Fantasy XIV's next big update will kick off Final Fantasy XI Crossover Alliance Raid series. Patch 7.1 Crossroads will arrive in November and will continue Dawn Trail's main scenario quest. Tony Hawk drops another video game tease. There will be a future. Skater previously claimed he was talking to Activision again. And then that brings us to Gamatsu stories, and I am going to take this opportunity, since it's taken me way too long to even get here. I am falling further and further down in rank, which is weird. Why am I falling so far down in rank when I feel like I've only been not playing for a month? Maybe I have been not playing for 2 months. I guess that was exactly the case. So I am at the very bottom of ranking at Yu-Gi-Oh! Now. That's not what I wanted to see. This, yeah. I am one step below Rookie 1. Boy, do you fall fast. I was at one point at Platinum 2 or 3, maybe even close to Diamond 5, Platinum 1, and just stopped playing, and at some point fell down to Gold. That would have been 1 month, and then I should have fallen down to Silver in 1 month, and then I should have fallen down to Bronze in 1 month, and then I should have fallen down here, and that is not what has happened. I've fallen down way further, way faster. I don't know why, and I kind of don't care. So I'm gonna pause the recording, take a quick bathroom break, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So yeah, smaller break there. Let's go through the Gamatsu articles and see if we can move faster. Avatar: The Last Airbender AAA action RPG is in development from Saber Interactive. that might be intriguing to me. I was a little too old to be watching Avatar The Last Airbender when it first aired, and only got older after that point. But yeah, it's an intriguing cartoon that felt like it was being made by Western people, Western animators, heavily being inspired by anime. But that might work to its advantage, and probably did, in that it can stay within the Western focus and censorship and morals. No hot springs bathing type scenes, and it can target that audience while still showing karate of some sort and magic and all of that. Regardless of whether it did succeed at that, I can also tell you that there was quite a lot of fan fiction, fan art of this character and love of this character, to the point where I'm not even sure that this character and her brother here, or even the animal character, are anywhere as well liked as the main female protagonist. And I know there was a whole spin-off series that was received somewhat less. There have been previous Avatar The Last Airbender games that have been pretty bad and not worth mentioning. And certainly I would have to question, since this is effectively going to be a Dragon Ball type game, how much of a video game you could really make out of that to make it interesting. I recently was playing, and every now and then I'm still jumping into Cardcaptor Sakura Memory Key on my mobile phone for that same nostalgia hit of Cardcaptor Sakura, and they really did a horrible job making a game. It's just full of microtransactions, full of wait timers, and there's just nothing interesting or fun to play there at all. Which that's the problem with a lot of mobile games, is that they very much are bait and switch products, where they're trying to get you into more profitable systems. I installed one of those ads where it looks like one thing, and then very quickly, after about an hour of giving you the game that you see in the ad, it tried to move to much more of a city management time waiting game with microtransactions and all that nonsense. None of which was what I really came to that game for, so I quickly uninstalled it. I will probably try to rush through the entire story of the story mode of Cardcaptor Sakura Memory Key, but then I'm going to uninstall that too. It's not anywhere worth your time. You're better off just watching the anime or reading the manga if you can afford it. That may very well be the case also with anything like Avatar The Last Airbender. There's probably some room there that they could have had something called Avatar The First Airbender as a prequel series, or have Avatar The Last Earthbender or Windbender or something like that. Well, not wind, but water, ice. You could do Avatar The First Icebender, and it could be half wind and half water as a sequel series. The concept, had it gotten more funding, certainly could keep on going. It is a sad statement that things like Avatar The Last Airbender has gotten as much support as the Western anime or animation industry can afford, and it's still failed miserably. Big part of that probably still, most Westerners don't consider themselves interested in going to a movie theater and watching an Avatar movie, or paying any money really, other than just seeing it on some kind of TV or streaming service. Whereas anime fans in Japan will pay for movie prices and pay through the nose for Blu-ray discs and things like that. So we have Komatsu with the Famitsu sales from 923 to 929. Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom opened at 200,121 retail copies being sold. I saw a YouTuber that made a recreation of Hyrule using foam and a lot of 3D printing, and it was a very interesting video, perhaps a little too long, that I was like, oh, this would be interesting to show little kids. And then about at the 10-minute marks, he kind of starts cussing and getting a little rough language and starts acting a little bit more ADHD and ridiculous. And I'm like, oh, well, now I can't recommend this to kids, which is a shame because this video is clearly only needed to just hold itself together a little bit to be a little bit more family friendly for young kids, like 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and the video would have been perfect. Maybe the rest of his channel isn't like that. I don't know. There was also a problem certainly in that he was just using a hot knife to cut the foam, which is a dangerous tool you wouldn't really encourage kids to use. And he was doing 3D modeling for the 3D prints using VR headsets, which is way too expensive, and 3D printers are going to probably be too expensive. So there's not a good connection in the video once you see this massive final recreation of Hyrule in foam. Like there's not a real good connection there where you can say, okay, I've shown this to a little kid, they're all hyped about it and they want to do something similar. What's the similar thing that you could that I could do? Because there really isn't anything there. It's too expensive to try and get a kid to learn 3D modeling and 3D print. It would take too much time. The kid would lose interest. You're not going to give a hot knife to them or any other kind of knife to really cut through foam. Foam is going to make a huge mess. You could get pre-cut foam pieces and have them paint on that. Hobby stores have pre-cut foam spheres and triangles and squares, and so then you could eliminate the element there, and the painting is about all you could do. So you needed kind of a starter guide or here's a suggestion of a product you can do at home. Instead it just comes off more like a Mr. Beast type video where it's like, I've got 1,000 Lamborghinis here that I'm gonna race all against each other. It's just like, it doesn't connect to reality at that point. It's interesting that Famitsu here is talking about sales, because Komatsu almost never reports on sales numbers. No, they do. I don't know what I'm saying. I guess I have just stupidly for years not realized that it was Famitsu reporting the sales, or I've forgotten it. It's more likely I've forgotten it. So the numbers here are kind of low, and we're going to see an updated version of this that goes down to 30. But yeah, Echoes of Wisdom in the #1 spot. But then PlayStation 5 and 4 getting the 2nd and 3rd spot with Legends of Heroes Kai no Kisekai. Then EA Sports in the #4 spot and #5 spot. Switch beating out the PS5. Then we have EA Sports for PS4 in the 7th spot. And then Moe yo Otome Doshi Kayu Kogatari is in #9. I think that's a visual novel. Yeah. Hardware sales. The Switch OLED model and Switch Lite are still massively outselling PlayStation 5, and PS4 is not selling but 31 units. PS5 Digital Edition massively. Switch is still massively outselling them every week that I see this. Even the original Switch doing very well. Xbox Series X and Series S still doing fairly well considering how bad they've done in Japan. Better than PS4 is doing. These massive sales numbers over a lifetime have put them in a very good position to wait to release the next Nintendo console, whereas the PS5 is struggling to catch up, but slowly getting there, I would say. But it's just going to catch up. The numbers just won't matter, because by the time the PS5 does catch up, the Switch 2 will be out, and then it's likely going to sell massive numbers to regain a lead. Yeah. I'm giving some thought of giving away my Switch, just because I've had it probably for about a year now and not played any games on it. I just don't have time. I knew I never really was going to have time for it, and now would be a decent time to hand it down to younger kids that have more free time and might appreciate it more. Yeah. There are still some Nintendo Switch games I might want to play, but there's a decent chance that the next console is going to be backward compatible. And frankly, at this point, I should probably just get ROMs of even brand new Nintendo games if I really want to play them and have the free time, which I probably won't. Yep, I'm trying to go through a cycle here of cleaning out and clearing out stuff that I'm not really using. You always want to do that and just try to keep that going. You don't want to hold on to things or make them too precious, become a hoarder, as it were. Let's see, Chicken Please Into the Hive launches November 7th for PC, later for the PS4 and 5, Xbox One and Series, and Switch. Now, I'm not seeing any links opened for any of these games that might have a Steam link. So, I think what I'm going to do on that case is not bother to click on any of the links and run a small chance that maybe I would never make a YouTube short around it, but save time overall today. Bartending murder mystery game Best Served Cold has been announced for all consoles and PC. It's from Warhammer 40k Shoota's Blood and Teeth developer Rogueside. That sounds like a very different game from what they're showing here. This also, I think, also highlights the problem, just how much news we have here. If I was to stream Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, that there might be too much of a shift of news being on Tuesday and Thursday, and very little on Saturday. And so there might be even less of a balanced experience if I was to shift my schedule that way. I don't think I'm going to do that anyways, but it is something that we are learning since I am streaming on an off day here. Ast Libra Revision DLC Ast Libra Gaiden, The Cave of the Fountain Mist for Switch launches October 17th. It's currently available for PC. Yeah. This is a game, apparently, you can't put on the fall list. I must have been signed. It's DLC. That's why. So it requires this, first of all. Yep. And this seems a little too classic JRPG for me. Platformer JRPG game. Also seems like might be a little boob centric. Though it doesn't seem like it's that boob centric. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Familiar Myth, Full End of Water and Light launches February 27th. And let's see. Is that going to just be a mobile game? Switch and PC. Interesting. It looks more like a mobile game to me than that, but maybe it's a port of a mobile game. Serial Drama X Mystery Visual Novel Mystery Walk has been announced for Switch. Wow, we're starting to see perhaps a slight resurgence in visual novels, like trying to be more of a thing, trying to advertise themselves as more of a thing. Perhaps this is also a pivot in that a lot of visual novels were going too much with the moe anime style, and the characters were just looking a little too young for PlayStation in particular, or the West in particular. And so I am noticing here this is more in the realm of the kawaii anime style. I still would say if you were to trace an actual human, they would anatomically not look like this, with the big heads and just being shorter overall. But yeah, this definitely feels like a different style, just in the dress and the outfits and the depictions, in that they're targeting older people, older adults. Rage of Dragons Neo PC closed beta test is set for October 11th to the 13th. Nothing really to say there, I guess. The multiplayer roguelike action RPG Kernel Hearts debut trailer and screenshots are available on Gematsu. Yep, again, kind of still going in that direction where slightly older characters, less schoolgirl outfits. Crow Country is coming to the PS4 and Switch on October 16th. Diesel Legacy, The Brazen Age, launches December 3rd. Let's see if we can see this. Looks like a fighting game. Looks like I've already made a YouTube short around it. Amanda the Adventurer for PS4 and 5 and Xbox One and Series launches October 10th. The Switch version is going to receive an update at the same date. I'm not sure if this really is a kid's game, though, or not. It looks like a kid's game. It's overwhelmingly positive, but its first tag is a horror tag, so I'd have to assume it isn't. It is a horror game. Slavic Punk Old Timer is coming to PS4 and 5 and Xbox One and Series on November 6th. It's currently available on PC. Is it called Slavic Punk Old Timer? I guess it is. Also, take note that it is mixed reviewed, so that just gives me an opportunity to take it off the follow list. The roguelite strategy RPG Death Tower adds a PS5 and Switch versions. A PC demo is now available. Slitherhead details more characters, combat skills, and Mong Sui stage. Does seem like it's going more into a deep dive of having specific characters, which is not really what I thought Slitherhead was going to be. I thought it was going to be mostly just random, almost procedurally generated characters that you could jump into and control. But yeah, they're going in a different direction. It might be fairly necessary to go in a different direction and have unique characters, because it also doesn't feel like the game's land area and land mass is going to be particularly large. It may very well be very little going on here. Alright, I'm gonna mute myself and take a... Nope, I'm gonna hang up on this, actually. It was just a scam call. I thought that was something more important, but nope. So, no interruption there. Yeah, I've immediately regretted giving my phone number to like 2 or 3 people and already are getting scam calls. There's maybe it's a coincidence, but maybe it very much is the case that shops like car repair shops and such are just constantly hacked, or the software they're using is constantly hacking and leaking out phone numbers, although it would just be very random phone calls too. Famitsu Review Scores, issue 1861 is available with Metaphor ReFantasio taking a screenshot from Gematsu and Silent Hill 2. We had already talked about this, but 9, 9, 10, and a 9 from Metaphor ReFantasio, getting a very high score, taking about 80 hours to clear the story and 100 hours with side activities. Also speaking kind of highly to my desires there, in that, yeah, I could see potentially playing a game like that where you're not committing 200 hours, 300 hours potentially to do all the side activities. Metro Quester Osaka got 29 out of 40, kind of low. Silent Hill got an 8, a 9, a 9, and a 9 for 35 out of 40, taking 16 to 18 hours to clear, making it a tighter game than you probably would want. It's not even really getting up to that 20-hour mark. That being said, the fact that it is kind of just a remake of an older game, dragging things out probably wouldn't have made anything better. You are still in this weird situation though. If you wanted to play all the Silent Hill games, there's not really a great way to play Silent Hill 1 at this point, nor do I think you really need to, nor is there likely going to be a remake of Silent Hill 3. This is almost certainly an attempt, a kind of lazy attempt, to reboot the Silent Hill series while not actually just calling it Silent Hill. They should have just called it Silent Hills, even without Kojima involved, to reboot the series and have a timeline that starts in Silent Hill 2 and has the elements of why Silent Hill is the way it is from Silent Hill 2, and then move forward from that spot. Also, Toho Ginso Wanderer Foresight got 29 out of 40. I will probably try and look up somebody reviewing Silent Hill 2 once those reviews start coming in, although generally I'm going to try and find somebody that I actually care to listen to instead of just a random person who's going to potentially say nothing. And that brings us to the GameDeveloper.com articles, and I still haven't fixed GameDeveloper.com's program, so undoubtedly there's going to be some extra extra articles here. We'll start closing. Epic Games will reduce the royalty fees for devs with simultaneous Epic Games Store launches. Like making a game in Unreal Engine, Epic will let you pay a discounted 3.5% in royalty fees provided your game hits the store alongside it or before other storefronts. I'm stumbling over the words there. Hi-Res Studio lays off staff to ensure Smite 2's long-term success. Several teams across Hi-Res and its subsidiaries have been impacted by layoffs as the company puts more weight behind Smite 2's development. I don't think Hi-Res Studio made the game Res, though. I think they made Smite. I'm not sure they made anything else worth mentioning. So there. The management is doubling down, tripling down on Smite 2, straight up laying people off otherwise. Devolver Digital launches a publishing label called Big Fan Games for licensed games, which is weird because I thought Devolver Digital already had a publishing label or a division, but maybe it's a case where they just don't want to put Devolver Digital branding on other games they publish, or some of the games they publish. I kind of thought they have already published things, though. Microsoft, we already saw, discontinued the HoloLens 2 with no successor in sight. We have moved quite a bit as far as what is the bandwagon that most managers are jumping on. From augmented reality, humans are going to be wearing augmented reality glasses and doing jobs and seeing manuals and how-to videos, to now the big hype train being artificial intelligence is just going to replace the human completely and eliminate all the jobs, which is really what they're trying to do. Of course, that's highly unlikely to happen when you're working on like a jet engine, but who knows. Apparently Blizzard's workplace culture seemed destined for chaos from day one. The new book Play Nice, The Rise and Fall and Future of Blizzard Entertainment sheds light on how Blizzard's road to success was shaped by a chaotic workplace culture. This is really more of an advertisement for Jason Schreier's book, and I would say if you want to read the book, then just read the book and then use your own judgment as far as how much you think the book is actually true or how accurate the book really is. Inherently, this feels like either on part of game developer or Jason Schreier, one of the two, trying to retcon reality and demonize Blizzard from day one. The problem with that is if you're a fan of any of the early Blizzard games, that would be the company that you supported and you liked and had some affinity to. So if you liked Diablo 1, Diablo 2, StarCraft, Warcraft 2, if you liked any of those first generation games, well, that is not something you want to hear, that it was a male chauvinist, sexist workplace. And it is, I think, also worth pointing out that that's not really been the complaint that's been made around Blizzard lately. A lot of the complaint has been Activision just controlling Blizzard and not letting Blizzard be Blizzard and losing all its talent eventually. So it's a complicated tale they're weaving, to say the least. There's a report that the VR studio XR Gaming is placing 72 employees at risk of redundancy. They must be in an area where they're required to mention that, and they can't just lay off people. In the United States, you can mostly just lay off people. California has some special laws as far as you have to warn them ahead of time, but I don't know if any of the other states do. Epic is letting parents restrict and track playtime in Fortnite and Unreal Engine Fortnite. I guess is what UEFN stands for. Parents and guardians can leverage 2 new features to keep tabs on their kids, although inherently that's too little, because I don't think you'd even want kids playing the Lego-ified version of Fortnite. There's better games to play, and it really, to me, would come down to social reasoning that I might let a kid play Fortnite if all of their friends really are playing Fortnite and they're going to be ostracized if they're not playing it. Then I would give them some small level of access, but otherwise I just say, hey, let's play something better. Let's see. Xbox expands its research division to collaborate with game developers. The new program within the Xbox Research Division allows developers to give the console maker feedback and help to improve in key areas. Which, when you phrase it like that, it really just points out that Xbox has been closed-minded and closed-eared for years, or probably from its inception. Which that's probably the case, too. Maybe it is just now that Xbox is realizing that they are quickly going to be the number 3 console, if they aren't already that far at the bottom, even around the world, even in the West. Let's see, the rest of these stories I think are old. The Annapurna Interactive collapse following years of infighting by top execs. Pokemon Unite gets gets knocked off of Belgium and the Netherlands in late 2025. There's Pokemon Company is vague as to why. Probably laws. I do know that there is also a thing going on that by 2025, if games don't have a rating, which is probably to say if games don't have a German rating, they won't be shown to German Steam users, or Steam users in Germany. I think probably is going to be specifically German identifying Steam users, though. Germany passing a law saying all the games have to be rated, which overnight that's going to make Steam in Germany go from having hundreds of thousands of games to having just thousands of games. It's going to be such an awful experience that you're just going to assume that all of the Germans are going to VPN around that. We talked about the real reasons behind them eliminating the arbitration clause. Now that more information seems to have come out, I assume those are the real reasons. Let's see, Nixon America is making layoffs to pursue exciting IP growth strategy. Chronicle launches a publishing arm for third-party developers. Yeah. See, the California law forces companies to admit digital media is licensed, not bought. Bannerlord sales have exceeded 2.5 million copies. Inward claims its AI tools will help developers move beyond crunch. Yeah, I doubt it. Remedy enters into £15 million euro loan agreement with Tencent. Yeah, and I think the rest of this is old news, so we'll just go ahead and skip the rest of these. I think some of what I even talked about was old news. So that's going to bring us to all the new games on Steam. And definitely feels like we're starting to see more games come out and less games just announce themselves. I think we can say no to text-based adventures. There's no way to do it, but it almost would make sense to play one style of game and then eliminate purchasing any more styles of that game. Yeah, but that would be a lot of work, and that only would be a good thought if I absolutely hated that style of game to the point that I know I'm never going to play another game like that ever again. And I don't think there's been too many games like that where I've had such a negative response. That's one of the beauties about video games, is that while many games can be in the same genre, they don't inherently have to play anywhere close to each other. Like those Wet Rooms games. You see low effort asset flippers make them all the time, but I do still leave myself open to the thought that it might actually be an interesting game in that. Yeah, because the concept itself is not completely bankrupt from originality. It's just the implementation. Yeah, if somebody was in one of those wet rooms and they were voice acted and there was a whole dialogue going on and conversations being monologues happening, that might catch my attention. Something, an interesting story could happen. Here we have Gaming Cafe Simulator, which I just don't know what a gaming cafe even is. Looks kind of Asian in concept, but yeah, that definitely, again, is one of those kinds of shops that, if it was going to make a profit, would have to take place in very rich areas where money is effectively no object. As somebody who was educated in computer science, I certainly at times thought about making a computer shop. But even when I was much younger and kind of fresh out of school, it was pretty obvious that where I lived, people were not willing to pay enough money to buy computers. Weren't really even too interested at the time of owning computers. It's easy to forget that a lot of people didn't even really care to own a PC until computers became cell phones, and cell phones became fairly commonplace. And even now there's a decent number of people that still have good reasons to not own a PC. So yeah, I could never even begin to think that that would have worked. Of the people it does work for a lot of locations, they are people that potentially owned Radio Shacks and were repairing VCRs and TVs, and they just evolved and had enough of a client base and had already established themselves well enough for it to make financial sense. You are very much in a weird situation where it's much easier nowadays to build a computer, so people don't really need to pay for it. Circuit City went out of business, but Best Buy swooped up to take up all of Circuit City's audience. And that was definitely stiff competition, and still is now. Why would somebody go to a small mom and pop computer store when they could go to Best Buy, just be sold a pre-built game that's probably not anywhere as good, but who cares? That warranty means a lot to a lot of people, as far as the feeling that a Best Buy will still be around and that they will potentially do that. Now this one catches my attention. There probably are a lot fewer people that actually work at recycling centers, so doing this job feels happy because you're potentially recycling, although let's be honest, most recycling is kind of just made up, and plastic recycling is basically impossible and just causes microplastic to happen. A lot of stuff ends up just getting burnt as far as paper and cardboard products. None of the products that packaging that's being made is ever been really designed to be recycled. And even if every single piece of packaging that an individual person has is recycled, it's still just a drop in the bucket compared to the massive waste that's going to be done by, say, shipping container ships dropping entire things into the ocean, trash bags into the ocean, and sometimes when storms happen, entire shipping containers of products into the ocean. You can do a lot better for the environment by simply only buying local. This looks a lot like Alone in the Dark, this game. Yeah, the more you can buy local, the more you can prevent from being on a shipping container, which wastes a lot of fuel, the better. And there is a strike going on right now with the shipping container workers, the shipping dock workers. So now would be a great time to practice that and see how much you can buy local, how much you can purchase without packaging on it. There's also an argument to just massively reducing and limiting the amount of packaging things have, using bamboo crates and reusable crates over and over again would be helpful. Still going through all these games. It came out on Steam. Increasingly, though, not having any real interest in what is coming out on Steam as far as new games. So I guess that was a long way of saying that I would like to. Here we have yet another Hitler anime girl nonsense game. I don't know why they let those on. I don't know why certain words like Hitler aren't just red flagged and prevented until somebody actually looks at it. No legitimate game is going to have Hitler in the title. Yeah. I was hoping that we would start to see more games that looked like they were important. But no. NVIDIA says it's getting closer to releasing its new app that's going to combine the NVIDIA streaming app and the NVIDIA Experience app and the NVIDIA Control app all into one. Still feels like I could probably do with something. The new video card drivers might be helpful. I almost didn't remember to even make YouTube shorts, and so I had like 3 or 4 windows just full of tabs at the end of Monday, which, yeah, can't fall back behind on that too much, otherwise it would just take way too long to make new YouTube shorts. I've also noticed that 3 or 4 of my YouTube shorts that have been released recently just have the wrong name on them completely. Kind of knew that there was going to be some glitchy ones though. Alright, and with that, I guess the only other thing I could do here is see if we could bring up gaming on Linux, but I don't think there's really anything too important to even talk about on gaming on Linux. I didn't even keep the thing on. Didn't even keep the tab open. So yeah, we'll just go over the headlines here and then that'll be the end of the stream. I guess I gained some momentum here in that this has only taken 2 hours and 15 minutes so far, whereas I felt like it could have gone 2:30 or 3. Still shorter than if I was to play any Yu-Gi-Oh whatsoever. Yu-Gi-Oh really was sucking down at least an hour, even when I was trying to move fast. And Monty Python-esque humor fused Renaissance art in Death of the Reprobate is coming out on November 7th. There's some more info here. Let's read that article about the Valve Steam collab with Arch Linux and potential future hardware. Humble choice for October, stacked full of goods. Good stuff. Adventure game about Death's daughter Prim releases October 24th. XR glasses on Steam Linux/Steam Deck get vastly better with XR gaming plugin. Interesting. Doom has been ported to run almost entirely on AMD GPUs. So no CPU involvement, or very little super CPU involvement at all. Steam Beta gets big recording improvements, plus Steam Deck OS 3.6.16 beta is out now. Probably should pull out my Steam Deck and see if the updates worth doing. Although mostly what I'm doing is I'm reading the updates and seeing if that's going to really matter to me. Because inherently all I'm doing is taking out the Steam Deck to update it and then putting it away after the updates happen. Yeah, here's the story I was talking about. From November 15th, all Steam games sold in Germany will need an age rating. Which I wouldn't be surprised if they just give the maximum age rating to every other game that doesn't have an age rating in Germany. China's continued rise on the Steam survey is continuing to increase at 1.87%. And then we talked about the Switch emulator. Let's see. Is there anything else here? Have to go to a previous page to see. A lot of these gaming on Linux articles though are just talking about games. So I don't mind talking about games, but that's not really what I'm coming here for. So the Steam Beta getting big gaming recording improvements, and Steam Deck OS 3.6.16 beta out now. Let's see, fixed game stored on an external drive showing up as available when the drive is removed. Login password. Every attempt to log in rather than requiring to navigate to submit. Well, this is reducing the security now. So the interaction on login password entry automatically checks instead of having to click submit also. That probably doesn't lower security if you hit the enter key. That's the same as submit. But when I was first reading this, it seemed like it was just trying every password as you typed it, which would severely reduce security. Yeah. Compatibility for native titles. Let's see. Added a setting to record microphone input alongside gameplay audio. Yeah, definitely needed that. And then SteamOS. Let's see. Updating Chromium. Add support for H.265 video encoding, which that when supported by the machine's GPU, that's going to be better. Recording up to 4K resolution. So this definitely is more focused on recordings and probably highlights where Steam's focus is and how far behind they are. They announce the recording and people get hyped about it and then basically forget about it for after a couple months, and Valve is still hyped on it and still working on it. It's probably always going to be the case though, is that anything you work on, either you release it in a completed state early on, in a completed state, or you just continue to work on it in the background. They've added a disable screensaver inhibit command to prevent Steam from inhibiting the screensaver when activity is detected. That actually is something that they needed, because it definitely was the case on the Steam Deck that when you were in desktop mode, you could not properly put it into a hibernation state or go to sleep. It would wake up later and drain your battery, which is the only other reason why I bring out my Steam Deck and install the update. Is just you expect the Steam Deck to work in a fashion that when you put it into sleep mode and then leave it for a week, when you turn it back on, its battery would be at the same level. Maybe you would lose 10% or so of the battery just sitting there, but really it should just be about the same. The Steam Deck doesn't work that way, or hasn't worked that way, and that's been a frustration, that you'll come back to a dead battery. You never want to come back to a dead battery in any device. Let's see. This is an intriguing technical feat that doesn't probably matter one bit. And it's probably a little bit over the head of me and most people too. But yeah, if I'm understanding this right, the idea of getting a program to run exclusively on a GPU is an interesting success. But it's not really an argument that computers at some point are going to be 100% GPUs with no CPUs. It may be a point where maybe GPUs and CPUs kind of merge, and there's going to be some legacy CPU code, and there'll be some legacy GPU code, and then there'll be a whole bunch of more newer code of a merged CPU GPU device. But people are just not going to update all the software to run exclusively on the GPU. Now, there is an argument to be made that it was downright dirty in the era of the 8088 and the 8086s and the 186 and the 286 and the 386. It was fairly dirty in those eras that the chips you would buy for computers were not coming with integrated graphics. And it was decades later before you started to get even slightly basic Intel integrated graphics type support on computers, where it would certainly have made a lot more sense if the CPU and the GPU technology were merged with the release of the 186 or the 286 or 386. But that also would be the area where there was a whole math coprocessor you could add to computers, and it also would have been an area where a lot of people's computers would need very little on the grounds of visuals. Before there were graphic cards, there actually were terminal cards that would straight up just put text on a TV screen and had no capability of showing pictures at all. But yeah, they really should have evolved to it being one chip to rule them all. Not even sure I really believe that RAM should be outside of that one chip as far as how computers should go. Maybe it should be more of a case that there's just 4 little squares on a motherboard, and on that you put one CPU here, a GPU chip here, maybe a secondary CPU chip here, and a RAM chip there. Be really cool if you could mix and match and have like 2 RAM chips. But it would all just be like a flat CPU, and then you would snap it down and put a cooler on top of all of that, and all the circuitry would be way closer to each other. Although at our current scale, it makes more sense for it all to be one giant chip anyways. The whole mixing and matching options, well, kind of nice. It's not necessary. You don't see that in cars and other products, where you can just get a drive shaft from one car and shove it into the engine of another car and put in like a alternator of a different car. That wouldn't be efficient. Well, the story here was XR glasses on Linux and Steam Deck get vastly better with XR gaming plugin. I think the headline alone is probably all I really need to say. This is what I am expecting the future will be at some point. So notice how the screen that's being shown here is just tilting and moving the Steam interface. Probably to balance out what you're tilting your head at while wearing the glasses. Notice that he immediately went into some kind of emulator that's playing PlayStation Network games. I assume that's an emulator. So nobody's going to want to look over your shoulder, to say the least, when you have that installed. I would say this is a really bad, seems like there's a zoom option they've programmed. Really bad demo though, for what I'd like to see. I'd rather them put the camera looking through the XR glasses than just seeing the front of the Steam Deck. It's not a terrible dock from the looks of it, but you can see how it is still going over the edge. They don't give you a lot of edge or bezel there. The adventure game about Death's Daughter Prim releases October 25th. Now, does Gaming on Linux have any links to Steam? Puzzles and diverse mini games. Yeah. This sadly is yet another example of me missing games. So I'm trying to look at every single new game that's coming out on Steam, and yet somehow this got listed without me seeing it. And then the humble choice for October: Jusant, Dome Keeper, Jack Move, McPistol. Of the Steam playable ones, you have Station to Station and Remnant Records. Then several non-Steam Deck supported ones. None of those games really jumping out to me. And then let's see what the more info on the Valve collab with Arch Linux and potential future hardware set. There's an interview for A1R M4X. Let's see, I don't know who that is. Talking about the way packages are built and signed. Let's see, I'm trying to scan here and read the whole article without going into too much detail. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's any real details new to say here as far as that article goes, though. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.